A reading from St. Matthew's Gospel. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire labourers for his vineyard. After agreeing with the labourers for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. When he went out at about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace, and he said to them, "You also go into the vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. When he went out again about noon and about 3 o'clock, he did the same. And about 5 o'clock he went out and found others standing around. And he said to them, "Why are you standing here idle all day?" They said to him, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You also go into the vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his manager, "Call the labourers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and then going to the first." When those hired about 5 o'clock came, each of them received the usual daily wage. Now when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also received the usual daily wage. And when they received it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the day and the scorching heat." But he replied to one of them, "Friend, I am doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what belongs to you and go. I choose to give to this last the same as I give to you. Am I not allowed to do what I choose with what belongs to me? Or are you envious because I am generous?" So the last will be first, and the first will be last.
This parable of the labourers in the vineyard is a tricky one. It only appears in St. Matthew's Gospel, and there have been many different interpretations as to its meaning. On the surface, it seems very simple. Early in the morning, a landowner, who I think we can take as representing God, hired people to work in his vineyard for an agreed standard daily wage. Throughout the day until early evening, he hired more and more people. When his manager came to pay them, the landowner told him to begin by paying those who came last to the vineyard, and everyone should be paid the same amount. Understandably, those who worked for the whole day weren't at all happy about this. The landowner told them that they had agreed to be paid the usual daily wage, and what he chose to do with his money was up to him. He asked them if they were envious because he was generous. So what are we to make of this? Is it right? Is it fair? Our instinct surely is to agree with the grumbles of the workers who slaved all day in the hot sun, only to find that they're being paid the same as those who only work for an hour. It doesn't seem fair. And in this day and age, trades unions would have a lot to say about it. But we should remember that Jesus' parables often turn the accepted order of things on their head. So let's look at the context in which Jesus told this parable. The social situation in Jesus' day was that many small farmers were being forced off the land because of debt incurred paying the very high Roman taxes. So large pools of unemployed men gathered each morning hoping to be hired for the day. They were the displaced, the unemployed and the underemployed. Those still waiting at 5 o'clock had little chance of earning money in order to buy food for their families. And of course, those waiting without much hope of work would have been the weakest, the oldest, the disabled. Was it their fault that they weren't at the head of the queue? And should they be penalised for it? I think that there are many meanings to be teased out of this parable. Could it be about God gathering people at different stages and different ages of their lives? Could it be about the poor, the disadvantaged, those at the end of the queue when it comes to food, to shelter, to medicines, to vaccines? Could it be about a reversal of what is really important, The things of this world, status, hierarchy, rank, power, or the things of God's kingdom, the things that are eternally important? Was it told as a rebuke to the disciples, who kept arguing about which one of them was the greatest and which would be the first to enter the kingdom of heaven? Is it about work? Don't compare your pay to others, or don't be dissatisfied if others get paid more and work less. Paying people the same, regardless of the work they do, is a pretty questionable business practice. But perhaps the parable isn't about the workers at all, or about the vineyard. If we rethink it and call it the parable of the generous landowner, then it becomes much clearer. Let's think about the references to the landowner. He agrees a wage. He pays whatever is right. He goes out again and again to gather in more and more people. He pays the last first and the first last. He told one of the grumbling workers, "Friend, I'm doing you no wrong. Did you not agree with me for the usual wage?" He asks him whether he's not allowed to do what he chooses with what belongs to him. He asks if they are envious because he is generous. This, to my mind, is to do with God's generosity. It makes me think of the parable of the prodigal son, whose father unreservedly welcomes him back, despite the son leaving home and spending all his inheritance. And surely the grumbling of the vineyard workers echoes the grumbles of the son, who in the prodigal son parable stayed behind with his father and didn't go off to lead a profligate life. It also makes me think of the parable of the lost sheep. Again and again, Jesus' parables lead us to an understanding of the overwhelming generosity of God, who forgives us time after time, and who does not consider the apparent worthiness or unworthiness of those seeking to enter the kingdom of heaven. Most probably, as with all Jesus' parables, all those possible meanings are there in the text. So how does this apply to us, living in the world as we do? Is the song of the Labour activist Joe Hill true? You will eat by and by in that glorious land above the sky. Work and pray, live on hay, you'll get pie in the sky when you die. Is the kingdom of heaven something we can only experience when we die, or is it here on earth? Think back to last year, the start of the pandemic, and the amazing outpouring of generosity shown by so many. Neighbours getting shopping and providing help for each other, money raised for various charities, the numbers signing up to help with a massive vaccination rollout, the food banks, the list goes on and on. Even the wearing of masks is a generous act in protecting others. As many of you will know, each Christmas, Chris and I decorate our outdoor tree with 1,000 lights and raise money for charity. We normally hold a grand switch-on with a fairground ride for children, steam engines, a fairground organ and fireworks. Last Christmas, despite not being able to have the switch on, through people's generosity, we raised an astounding £2,500 for the Worcester Food Bank. A lady we'd never met gave us an envelope containing £100. The bin men had a whip round, and children put small change in the tin outside our house. How can we, as followers of Christ, show something of God's generosity in our own lives? It need not be in large ways. It need not be in financial ways. Every small act of loving kindness, every phone call or email to someone we haven't seen for some time, every thoughtful gesture, every kind word is showing God's love, is demonstrating God's overwhelming generosity. If we open our eyes, the kingdom of heaven is all around us, and we can and should be a part of it. Amen.